Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new workshop from Horus Apollo Summer Program. Today's workshop will be on the common threats and challenging facing both the European Union and Egypt. And when we speak about Egypt, it's more of a reflection and an example of the other Arab countries located in the Mediterranean region. So whatever applies in Egypt will basically and in some ways applies to the other Arab countries in the Mediterranean. Basically, and kindly note that we have an Arabic version of this workshop and presentation along with this English version. Both you can find them on our website. And if you have any questions concerning those presentations, please don't hesitate to speak to us through our website. You can send an email, you can send a comment or whatever, and we are very happy to answer your question and give you a feedback on your comment. Basically, this workshop, from its name, is speaking about the threats and the challenges facing the Mediterranean region, and specifically, we are speaking about the European Union and Egypt. The workshop aims to develop an awareness and understanding of the common threats and challenges facing Europe and the Middle East. Specifically, we are speaking about Egypt, and it tries to open a platform for discussion on how to meet those challenges all together in the Mediterranean. This presentation, fortunately, is trying to make more of a comprehensive and a multi-perspective analysis of all the factors that are affecting the Mediterranean region, and it tries to bring all those factors together and tries to link the dots between them, because we cannot speak about one factor aside from the other. All the factors are linked together, all the factors are combined, and their effects, unfortunately, they are affecting each other, unfortunately. In this presentation, we will come through each and every factor in an independent way, and we are trying, and later on, we will try to connect the dots and to bring all of them together to the table and try to see how they are affecting each other in more comprehensive way. The first of all the challenges that we are facing, and as we can see, okay. So basically, developments in the region continue to shape the history. Of course, from a historical angle, we can say that developments in the region continue to shape the history and politics of the world. The Mediterranean Sea provides immense economic resources, such as hydrocarbons and fish stocks, and invaluable trade routes. However, its benefits depend on stability and cooperation. Indeed, the situation in the Mediterranean illustrates that peace and security are inseparable from democratic, economic, and social progress, and from the advancement of gender, youth, minority, and human rights. Events over the past few years in the region have forcibly and painfully made this very, very, very clear. Today, the Mediterranean region faces serious challenges on multiple fronts: illicit trade in drugs, weapons and natural resources, of course, large movements of refugees and migrants who are preyed upon by human smugglers and traffickers, maritime piracy, along with instability and insecurity, and civil wars and conflicts inside many countries in the region. The drug trade as well is also generating deadly spillover effects, such as increased drug use and health crises. In parts of the region, fragility is being worsened by systematic violations of human rights and violence against women and girls and people in general. The Mediterranean is also suffering from severe environmental degradation and natural resources constraints. In recent years, food scarcity and sharp rises in prices have led to social and political unrest. So these are the factors in general that shapes the future of the Mediterranean. As we can see, we have many factors, we have many negative factors which are affecting the future of the Mediterranean. Most of them are considered to be threats and challenges facing all the countries in both sides of the Mediterranean region or the Mediterranean Sea. And we gave you like an example of all those threats, but we will come to each and every one of them in particular and in a specific way. Let's start with the first challenge that we have in our list. The first one, unfortunately, is the stability, or we can say instability. The Mediterranean region has faced increasing challenges in terms of stability over the past 25 years. Due to the persistence of old unresolved conflicts, along with the emergence of new ones, which have been worsened by growing imbalances and inequalities in the countries of the Mediterranean, especially in the southern part of it. Moreover, conflicts broke out not only between neighboring countries, but also within each of our societies and each of our countries. The new security dynamics in the Mediterranean region are entirely different from what they were after the Cold War. At that time, security and stability were the order of the day, and the Mediterranean was regarded as a NATO's leg in terms of security, of course. But this is no longer present in the light of the emergence of new regional and international players on the political scene of the Mediterranean who are trying to control it and who are trying to impose their agendas on the countries of the Mediterranean and to shape its future plan. These players are threatening the influence of the existing powers and generating new security formulas in the region. So that's why we have now this kind of hazy map or a hazy future of the Mediterranean. We don't know yet what will happen next, but from the factors that's happening now and from the incidents that are happening now, we can say that this future is not very brightening. But we will see what's happening. But in the presence of instability, it is unlikely to have some kind of peace unless we have this kind of collaboration and cooperation together to overcome instability and to overcome its effects, its negative effects on the countries of the Mediterranean in both sides, either in northern parts or in southern parts. And this is very, very clear. The problems or the instability problems are very clear because most of the security and stability challenges in the Mediterranean are undertaken largely or solely through traditional security responses and arrangements and ad hoc solutions. When such approaches carry the risk of prolonging unacceptable status quo or worsening situation of not backed by efforts to address the underlying root causes of instability. As we see, the traditional approaches which are implemented to try to overcome instability and to control it are very obsolete, are very old, and we need to replace them with unconventional approaches, with new and creative approaches that are trying to address the underlying root causes of the instability rather than working or trying to overcome its effects or trying to overcome its effects rather than its causes. Of course, one of the other factors that are linked to stability is the rise of extremism and terrorism in the region, and it's very clear threat to the region. And in some ways, it is linked to instability because we have both conventional threats and unconventional threats. And the rise of extremism and terrorism is more of unconventional nowadays. It has creative and it has different tactics and tools, and it tries to increase and prolong the instability of the countries in the Mediterranean region. So basically, the first two threats will be linked to instability and security threats and extremism and terrorism. The third factor The third factor that is affecting the Mediterranean and considered to be a threat or a challenge is, of course, the COVID pandemic. The current epidemiological emergency related to the emerging coronavirus disease is also worsening the poor social and economic conditions in the Mediterranean countries, both in North and South. And this has a very negative effect on the economies of the region. So we can see those economies in bad situations. We can see that they are not functioning well. And we have a lot of structural economic problems that the countries cannot overcome, the countries cannot deal with, because they are very structural and because they are very, very deep. And the pandemic, unfortunately, was like worsening already bad economic conditions in the Mediterranean countries. We can see the case of Greece, we can see the case in Italy, and of course in the southern parts of the Mediterranean, the economic situation is already very poor. The people are suffering already from poor economic situation and poor economic conditions. So the pandemic came and put another layer of poor economic conditions over the people in the Mediterranean. The fourth challenge or threat that we have, and this one is very pressing nowadays, is the environmental threat and climate change threat. We need to mobilize all our common resources to meet the massive challenges of climate change, which is already seriously affecting all the Mediterranean countries. The countries of the Mediterranean basin witnessed a shift in the ecological balance, an increase in pollution, and increasing shortage of water, uncontrolled urban growth, along with real estate and property speculation, especially along the coasts of the Mediterranean. It is very internationally recognized that one of the most important components of sustainable development is the fight against pollution. And the Mediterranean is considered to be one of the regions in the world that suffers the most from this phenomenon, as it is a strategic corridor, and in many cases, it is a compulsory corridor for many commercial ships that aim with its various wastes and secretions at sea. In addition to that, the effects of tourism, industry, and forced migration are also affecting negatively the environmental condition in the Mediterranean and changing the climate in one way or another. Many studies on this subject have shown that plastic constitutes from 78 to 90% of the pollutants that are drawn the pollutants of the Mediterranean Sea. In this case, we need to find concrete and shared responses to the current hydrological. In this case, we need to find concrete and shared response to the problem of environment, and we need to make more of a shared response to overcome the problems of climate change, because they are affecting in a very, very negative way the situation in the countries, the Mediterranean countries, the situation in the Mediterranean countries, and this also adds to the poor conditions of the people who are living there. The sixth threat and challenge which is facing the Mediterranean is the problem of migration and refugees. And we also, in this case, we need to find a concrete and a shared response to the current historical challenge regarding refugees and migration. And we should try to prevent regional conflict and combat intolerance, racism and extremism, and terrorism must remain a top priority. We need to have a clear, it is very clear that we need to address the drivers of displacement rather than trying to control it in an not deeply, try it in an on deep way. And according to data from the International Organization for Migration, more than 900,000 migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers arrived in the European Union via the Mediterranean in 2015, mostly via the central and eastern Mediterranean route to Greece and Italy. The number of deaths, which exceeds 3,500 cases in 2015, exceeded the number of victims recorded in 2014. The number of other unreported deaths is unknown, even with the estimates of the number of missing after ships and boats sank in the Mediterranean. Bodies are often not recovered, nor should we forget that many migrants die along the way to Europe coming from Africa and the Middle East. So basically, migration and refugees also is a very pressing issue, and we need to focus on it, and we need to focus on the root causes of migration and the root causes of displacement, because this will be a very important approach. This is a very important approach to overcoming the problem of migration and refugees. And we will not just focus on short-term or medium-term solutions, but rather on long-term approaches, long-term solutions to the migration and refugees problem, trying to address the root causes, trying to change the root causes and overcome them, so as to figure out the whole migration and refugees problem. Another challenge in the same area is the organized crime networks. And this is very linked to migration and refugees, and this is very linked to security instability and security threats as well. As we said, we are connecting the dots, and all those factors are linked together. We cannot speak about traffickers, about migrants, without speaking about organized crime networks who take the opportunity or seize the opportunity to use migrants and refugees for their own interests, and try to take money from those people to get them to Europe. And of course we know that this negatively affects the region in one way, and of course it increases it increases the influence of organized crime networks in the region, and makes it more hard to overcome them or try to control them. Another challenge that we have in the same case is the energy security. As we can see, access to and control of energy resources from oil, gas, and nuclear resources becomes a catalyst for instability in the region, with a number of critical sites in the south and east. For example, ISIS is taking the control, the Islamic State or ISIS is taking the control of some of those resources in Iraq and Syria, and other extremist groups is taking those resources, or like putting their hands on those resources in Libya, for example. So they are trying to, like extremist groups and unconventional players and actors are trying to put their hands on the resources that the region have, along with the traditional or conventional players such as governments. So we have this kind of war or this kind of conflict over resources in this region. And as we see, this region is full of resources which making or prolonging the conflicts and prolonging instability rather than trying to control it and managing it. For example, gas discoveries in the Eastern Mediterranean are a major dynamic turning point, constituting one of the most important drivers for the shift in the security environment of the Eastern Mediterranean. At the same time, the gas discoveries increased the importance of the region, provided it with economic opportunities and chances for multilateral cooperation between Egypt, Cyprus, and Greece, and gave way for Israel's rapprochement with those countries within the framework of the energy file. The gas discoveries, however, created mounting challenges, triggering a number of conflicts over maritime demarcations between some Eastern Mediterranean countries, including between Cyprus and Greece on the one hand, Turkey on the other, as well as between Israel and Lebanon and Israel and the Palestinian Authority. So energy security is considered to be a challenge and a threat or an opportunity at the same time. It depends on how we perceive it and how we approach the energy issue. Another challenge or threat facing the European Union and the Arab countries, and specifically Egypt, of course, is the cyber crimes. An essential role in today's world is played by the cyber field, and it is meant in its broadest sense from data and information security to hybrid warfare, social media, and the dark web, and more traditional cyber security and warfare. So cyber crimes are very pressing as well, because now everything is like related to computers, everything related to cyber field, related to data and information security. So this issue as well needs to be addressed and needs to be revisited in our time nowadays. After like specifying those main current threats and challenges facing the European Union, or facing European Union and Egypt, and in some ways the Mediterranean region, and given the current situation in the Mediterranean, the majority of opinions agrees that it is difficult to predict decisively what will the situation be like in the Mediterranean region in the future, and the time it will take for stability to be restored following what the new balance of power will dictate, given that the majority of similar cases remain unstable. It is envisaged that the final outcome of the Mediterranean map and the final outcome of how to deal with those challenges and how to deal with those threats will present new balances of power to be determined primarily by economic interests, followed by dealing with concerns and urgent threats. We cannot predict in an exclusive way or exclusively and very specifically what will be the future of the Mediterranean region with those threats and those challenges, but we can say it all depends on how the Mediterranean region, the countries, the governments of the Mediterranean region approach those challenges and threats. They will focus on they will focus on cooperation, or they will not focus on it and focus more on conflicts, or focus more on trying to achieve, each country tries to achieve its own interests, its own interest in an independent way from the other countries. In this sense, as we said, we don't have this kind of clear prediction of the future, but we can say that we have some conclusions that will help the countries and the governments of the Mediterranean region to come all together and try to overcome the challenges and threats all together rather than in an independent way. The first conclusion that we have is that we should work on strengthening the parliamentary dimension and the parliamentary cooperation between governments of the Mediterranean. In this regard, the national parliaments of the European Union and the parliaments of the southern neighborhood play a very vital role in promoting regional dialogue and cooperation and ensuring greater transparency and political responsibility. The European Parliament will work closely with the European Parliament should work closely with national parliaments to strengthen the political dimension of the Mediterranean partnership and to counter the worrying trend towards nationalism and populism, which is growing in most of its countries on all the shores of the Mediterranean. Also, we should work on achieving a collective response to climate change, with the Mediterranean region warming 20% faster than the rest of the world. At one of the world's hotspots in terms of climate change, we must share experiences and knowledge related to this challenge, support projects and initiatives related to low emissions, achieve climate resilient development, and harness the economic potential offered by renewable energy resources. We also must focus on collective attention on youth and education. Democratic trends in countries with a youthful population represent real opportunities for our region, but only if we can create new sustainable jobs that provide a sense of dignity and belonging for our youth. And this should be combined or coming along with making a drastic change in management style to a migration problem. As we said, addressing the root causes of it rather than its effects or rather than what it represents. Also, we should work on strengthening the dialogue and cooperation with different partners on northern, eastern, and southern coasts of the Mediterranean, and this actually should this kind of cooperation should focus on citizens and the needs of citizens to voice their opinions, to voice their needs and their priorities, so as to make effective policies along the Mediterranean. This is actually what we have for today. So thank you for being with us in this short and concise presentation. Hope to have you with us in different events and different workshops. Thank you so much.